hosted by Brandy Pet.
Happy Thursday, everybody. It's me, Brandy P, with Yes, I Am the Veteran podcast. I hope everyone had a great week. I know for me, mine was quite eventful, working on a special project as like a cigar cutter. And for the first time I ever did it, I actually made a blade that I couldn't use. So I was pretty upset. It was actually quite funny because we had a Forge and Fire champion. He was my Forge master, and he was basically like trying to comfort me. It's okay. I've never broken a blade, but everybody makes mistakes, and things can happen. You really never know. But I'm truly honored today to have someone come on all the way that I actually met back in my Miss Veteran America days. And I love watching her journey and what she's doing for the community. I'm very privileged to announce our guest today. So Miss Ann Lutz, Miss New Mexico America Select Veteran. I will bring her to the stage now. Hey, sis, how are you doing?
You are wearing your tiara and your sash.
Yes, I know.
Yes,
so
thank
the
you.
lovely Miss Ann sent me the crown and the sash. It says podcast queen. I had to wear it today just because of the fact that I thought it was very sweet. Appreciate you.
Yes, and you are a podcast queen. And I use the good. You look so cute in the tiara and sash. Thank you for wearing that. How did you like the bizcochitos, the cookies from New Mexico?
Of course. They were so good, man. Reminded me back. I brought me back to when I was stationed in New Mexico. So I was definitely like, oh man, I remember these. I haven't had these in years. So thank you, sis.
Where were you?
I was stationed
in New
at
Mexico.
well, it's known as Afghanistan, but I was at Cannon Air Force Base. Was my duty station.
There's nothing out there.
Yeah, I know your face.
There's nothing.
Yeah, Helmet is way more fun. But I had some. Yeah. It really isn't. No, just cows and people. That's about it. And a couple Chili's. I have one Chili's. We were pretty excited about that. I remember when they first built it. And it was like the thing, the talk of the town, because you couldn't drink. They had one bar, I think, or two maybe. And so, it was a challenge. And there was a time change literally like 10 minutes from the city limits. So if you wanted to go to Amarillo, you already lost an hour. So it was just like you had less time to do what you wanted, so you had to plan accordingly. But did you want to go ahead and introduce yourself to everybody that maybe didn't?
Yes. Well, first of all, Brandy, thank you for having me on your podcast. Yes, I am the veteran. So we are both Air Force veterans, and I'm just so proud to have served. And although we didn't serve together, we met through Jazz Booth's organization, Miss Veteran America and Final Salute Inc. You were in a different cohort year. Were you 2021? Is that right?
I was 2020, but we were presented in 2021 because of COVID. So they had us presented prior to everyone competing. Yeah, but it was awesome meeting you. I remember we were with Maggie. Actually, we had our veteran tattooed by the Ink Master, and we came to visit you guys, just to say hello. And Maggie had like the funnest time. The paratrooper that was with us, he was like in heaven. He was like, this is exactly where I want to be, because we were with Round Canopy parachuting team. So they were very happy to escort us to see you guys.
Oh, that's really sweet. There's a lot of support out there. And this year I'm in a different competition, an actual pageant. So shout out to Royal Productions by NM. And I can say the word pageants because so it's such a beautiful sash. And also we're still looking for state representatives. So if you are a woman veteran, then they're looking for, I think Miss Texas is claimed, Miss New Mexico. There's a Ms. and Ms. category. And then, so we're still, go ahead.
I was going to ask, is there a salty ex-wife category? I people like to know.
I'm not sure, but but I know like the state crowns are just absolutely gorgeous. So thank you, Natasha from Royal Productions NM for this beautiful crown and sash that you just saw. And so the platform that we're going to talk about today, and I know Brandy has done some research and we're going to be posting. We're not service providers. We're just raising awareness and letting everybody know about the topic of domestic violence. So my platform is Engineers Against Domestic Violence. While I'm competing in the national, I'm right now in this New Mexico America Select pageant, a select veteran pageant. But Royal Productions by NM, they want to tie it back to, raising awareness about domestic violence. And we talked before we went live here, that during COVID it spiked. And so there's a lot of resources out there that we'd like to share with you. And there's a hotline that people can call. And I believe, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
I was curious. So, what made you choose this particular platform to represent while you are currently competing? And just so everyone knows, the reason she mentioned that about pageants is that during Miss Veteran America, if you state it's a pageant, which everyone does, it's a competition, you have to do push-ups. Literally, I've literally seen women in full gowns, decked to the nines, doing straight push-ups, and there's a drill instructor very close by. But so that was why it's funny. But what made you want to decide to choose a specific platform? Did it reach maybe close to home, or was it something that you really felt was understated that you maybe wanted to get more awareness for?
So the reason why I went with Royal Productions by NM, and Natasha is the CEO of that organization. And this is a different type of pageant where we talk about domestic violence because it affects everyone, not just veterans, not exclusive to only veterans, not exclusive to just women, because there's some men out there too. Like I have a friend who had an ex-wife who would kind of beat him up. And the poor guy was like, if I ever get a call from law enforcement, of course they're going to blame the guy. And so, and he, to no fault of his own, like he, left that relationship and moved on to a much healthier relationship. Like I'm fortunate. I've never experienced any type of domestic violence. I did a ride along with somebody very close to my family who's a law enforcement officer. And there was a domestic call that we responded to. And, I'm just observing as the ride along. And it affects so many families. Like even we walked into this home and it was just, everything was in its place. It was clean. Like you're like, what's wrong? And I guess the couple, they would rather call the police and go to marriage counseling because they argued about sharing like a phone charger. So, the police officers that were there, they just said, look, what can we do so you don't have to call us back? Because we can give you resources. I mean, it wasn't domestic violence, but it was still a domestic call because it was husband and wife. And, their little girl answered the door and everything was, in its place. Like it was a beautiful townhome. So we were like, what could possibly be wrong? They just haven't talked to each other in months. And so, and so there's a lot. The 800 number, I know this is from the National Domestic Violence Hotline. If you are in danger, call 911, but there's a hotline. It's 800-799-7233. So it's 800-799-7233. That's the hotline. And I know, like, we talked about this too right before we went live, that it's one of those phone numbers that there might be a backlog, there might be wait time, because that tells you that's good that people are using that service, but there's such a need for that.
And that's good and bad too. I would say, I apologize for interrupting you. And I mean, for me, I've personally been a victim of domestic violence myself. I mean, for me, like I was in a relationship where it turned physical, and it was something that everyone assumes when they hear abuse of domestic violence or, anything along those lines, that it's a certain type of stereotype. But to be quite honest, abuse can appear in all forms, ethnicities, cultures, and backgrounds. It's something that, no one ever like wakes up, going, I'm going to be abused today, or I'm going to, have this happen today. It's something that, unfortunately people are put in circumstances that are either outside of their control or they have very limited options of what they can do. And you do feel very powerless. And as Anna was saying, males as well as females are absolutely at risk, or are actually experiencing this in the home. And it absolutely has gone up since the COVID. The veteran community alone, it's been reported that it's gone up over 8% since 2020. So it is quite on the rise. And for me, I mean, it's personal. And a lot of people, they don't feel they have these resources. And, to be quite honest, the VA has even created new resources that even I didn't know of regarding this. So absolutely, education needs to be out there. So people that are in need or they need additional resources, they have that available to them. And what was, and if I could ask a little bit further back, do you feel that most domestic violence cases are reported? Or if not, would you feel that what would the reasons be that they would not report, if so?
Yeah, so I showed a clip about there's a MMA fighter or I guess MMA fighter, Sean Strickland, and they did a podcast where he talked about when he was a kid that his mother, like he was hiding under the bed, and I guess he didn't know whether, I guess we're all adults here, he didn't know whether it was just rough sex or just his dad just being, abusive. And he was like, I'm going to kill you, to his mom. And he took a guitar and bashed it over his dad's head and then called the police. And then his mom bailed his dad out of jail. So I don't know. There's so many reasons, there's so many, I guess, codependency. There's also like maybe the person in the relationship is very codependent on the other person or just so attached that they don't know any other way out. And I guess it takes so many tries for somebody to finally break out of that type of relationship. It's not going to happen overnight. And it could be like coercion. It could be the person who's being abusive could threaten the person or use their children to, as leverage. So there's so many factors and that go into play. It could be it could be a cultural thing that we don't understand. And I've been reading, there's an organization called Domestic Violence Awareness Project. So I've been going to their website and they host like webinars, and their webinars talk about not just domestic violence, but stalking. And as a veteran, my platform is Engineers Against Domestic Violence because I'm an engineer. But, I'm like, I wonder, even as a veteran, I wonder what the Uniform Code of Military Justice has to say about stalking and domestic violence. So I looked it up and sure enough, there's like UCMJs on stalking and domestic violence, but it focuses more on like family members and like people close to you, but not like, what about acquaintances? What about, I guess I don't know how far back the law was written or the UCMJ was written, but sometimes it's, years old and might need revisions.
Sorry, you're breaking up a bit there. I apologize.
Oh, okay. Where did I break up? I can backtrack.
Oh, it was just like the last few, like 20 seconds or so.
Oh,
I just wanted to make sure that we
UCMJ.
could hear what you were talking about.
Sure, the UCMJ about stalking and domestic violence, but it only focuses on like family members or people close to the person, but it doesn't really give a clear, clear words on like, what if they're stalking an acquaintance? What if they're stalking like a coworker? Yeah. So that's going to be interesting to see if they're going to change that.
Yep, absolutely. And actually on that note, so U.S. Medicine came out with a domestic violence study stating that 36% of male service members and 38% of women experienced either physical violence, and stalking, but it is assumed for service members the rate is far higher at 58% of veterans were exposed to domestic or sexual violence. That is absolutely just like mind-boggling to me. It is that high because we're not even in the era of wall-to-wall counseling. Like, I mean, I'm going to be honest. Like, our predecessors, they were probably far more physical, especially depending on branch. However, the fact that it is that high, I mean, and most of these numbers that they come out with studies are actually quite underreported. That's quite alarming to me. And the fact that there's not enough training that is out there and readily given to either service members or the veteran community who are experiencing this absolutely definitely needs to change. And so I definitely think that you're absolutely you have a point. And they also found that 15% or more VA facilities do not screen for domestic violence as it is not federally mandated. It's only recommended.
Really?
So
wow.
People are slipping through the cracks literally because they're not even bothering to do that screening to assess. So they're basically getting information based off incomplete data, meaning that it's probably closer to 70, I would assume. But again, this is just per the study that was done in 2018.
Yeah, that's crazy because it could mean life or death for some people.
Yes.
And, you know, some of the statistics, and these are just statistics, but, um, I did okay, so I found the statistics, and let me go ahead and read it out loud, just trying to get to the part. Okay, 11 in 7 women and 1 in 25 men. On average, near 20 people per minute are physically abused. 1 in 4 women, 1 in 9 men experience severe intimate partner physical violence. 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men have experienced some form of physical violence. So, and I'll stop right there because the numbers are just staggering. And one of the stories that I heard from, so I did aircraft maintenance for a career broadening tour, and one of the female maintainers, we were good friends because her office is literally down the hall from mine, and she was in another squadron, but we would always trade notes. And she was telling me she's a Mustang, so she was prior enlisted.
Oh, she'll be back. So, all right, sis. All right, let's see what happened here. Bear with us. Okay, so what were you saying?
Yeah. See, where did I get cut off? Was it?
It was right when you were talking about when you were speaking with the female service member in a different squadron.
Okay, so she's a Mustang, so she's prior enlisted, and she was a fuels maintainer, fuels maintenance airman at one time, and she had to climb a ladder on the aircraft, and the guy that she was working with, don't know if it was another airman or sergeant, he reached up and grabbed her from below the ladder. What she did was she kicked him down to make the point. Yeah, good for her. Like, she was like,
hell yeah,
excuse me, that doesn't happen. And then she goes, and then after she kicked him down and he fell, she goes, now get back up, give me that wrench, and let's finish this job. And so, for somebody like her to have that much self-esteem, to be able to defend herself and take care of it right then and there, and just let him know he can't get away with, grabbing or touching somebody. And then hopefully he'll think twice about doing that to the next person, especially when you're, trying to fix.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially in the maintenance squadrons, like, it's primarily male. There's maybe 1 female and like 30 guys, basically. So each squadron has 5 females usually on average, and 3 to 4 are pregnant and deployed or something.
It depends.
If I recall.
It depends. At the time, and this was right after September 11th, at the time I was at Davis-Monthan Air Force Base, and I know they're retiring the A-10 aircraft. But the stories that you hear, and I think majoring in engineering, and that's my job, I'm an engineer, that totally helps with self-esteem, knowing that you can support yourself, support your children, your child. So Engineers Against Domestic Violence, that's the platform, and there's a need for STEM in our country, and there's also a need for just knowing what to look out for, because we might be so busy with our jobs, we're engineers, that's all we do, but then you don't really you don't have that, I guess, emotional intelligence to look out for those things. Like, hey, are you okay? What's going on with your relationship?
Yeah.
Is everything okay?
Yeah.
And sometimes that's all it takes, is somebody asking, hey, sis, you all right? I mean, tell me about
afraid to report.
Oh, what was that?
I apologize. It kind of broke up there. A lot of people are afraid to report because they, I had a female that I've worked with, and she was assaulted sexually while she was deployed, but she had drank alcohol. She was very concerned that she was going to get court-martialed because of that incident, and basically her assault would not have been taken seriously. And she's just one of many, many females with stories similar to this. And many cases go vastly underreported because people they're worried about being ashamed. They're worried about public opinion and what people will state, that when they actually tell them, they're worried that they won't be believed or taken seriously. And unfortunately, in the military, that does sometimes happen. And they have made strides since the Vanessa Guillen Act was passed. However, we are still a very long way from where we need to be to adequately care for our service members without permanently traumatizing them. I was a victim of assault myself. I had a supervisor who was mentally imbalanced. She went off all her psych meds, and I had cut my hair very short. And, because I was with patients, I didn't have time for stuff. So I cut it all off. You had like a little wedge. I'd be like in the mirror every day, checking the back to make sure it didn't go below the collar, because you always have those tech sergeants there would be like looking for you to be out of regulations just to write you up. And so she literally grabbed a big fistful of my hair and yanked it all the way down. And I was just like, whoa, like, that's assault. First of all, you're an EMT. You should know better than anybody. And then we had to go into a staff meeting. When I stated this, she's like, I'll show you assault. And she literally jumped. I'm not lying. She jumped across this picnic table and lunged at me. And I'm on the other side. My NCOIC and my superintendent had to grab her each by one leg and pull her back. And she fought the whole way. And she wasn't little. She was a bit over, she's about $190. So she wasn't little. But I mean, she got about this close to my face and she fully wanted to assault me. She threatened to burn my house down with me in it. It was horrifying and you feel trapped in your own life. And for me, it was just like, no one's going to believe me. And, they tried covering it up. It didn't happen. You didn't see anything. I was like, it did happen and she cannot supervise me anymore because I'm scared it will escalate. And it did. And that's actually what ended up going towards my triple limb salvage. So it is very important to be your own best advocates when, you feel that you're having these type of situations or, you're seeing someone else in a situation. Speak up and be there for your sisters. Like Ann was saying, at the end of the day, we are our own best advocates, in males too. I've met male service members that were sexually assaulted in the service as well. And there's quite a bit of shame that comes with that, especially, a lot of us were in the era of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, so at the end of the day, yes, it's allowed, but at the end of the day, it's, will I have reprisal? And it's a very real fear, I feel.
Yeah, I mean, that's just messed up. That's messed up that, there's definitely something innately concerning when a person lunges at you and tries to like prove like, oh, this is assault. I mean, that several years ago, I don't know if you remember the story about the military. I guess she was a lieutenant or a captain, and there was a civilian that she worked with in like a hospital setting, and he burned her face. Like he like splashed this chemical in her face, and she was burnt. And I wonder, like, I need to follow that case a little bit more closely to find out what laws have changed regarding workplace violence. I mean, we have training now on workplace violence, on, active shooter, but it's sad when you see stories like that. And she's still recovering. I mean, she's, permanently scarred.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and that's a case where you have a civilian, DoD civilian, and a military member at a hospital, and luckily somebody was there to help her when that happened. But obviously, I think some of the stalking involved, obviously he's been watching her, and so that I want to say that case was at least 10 years ago. And of course, we have social media now, and back then there wasn't like, you had websites, but you didn't have the social media, the magnitude that we have now. Yes. But I'm sure that's one of many cases where it's like, man, that's messed up. And I don't ever know what happened to that guy, if he's still in jail. It makes you wonder whatever happened to the perp, and how do we protect him from doing that to somebody else? How do we protect, and sometimes you have to be brave enough to see what's going on and to stand up, not only for yourself, but that if you speak up and you're now the bad guy or the bad gal for saying, no, this is wrong. And for you to stand up and advocate, not only for yourself, but for whoever else might have to deal with these yahoos in the future. And I think, that has a lot to do with self-esteem. That has a lot to do with just standing your ground and then documenting. Like, there's so much that could happen, and it takes up all of your time. And, sometimes you have to sit down and write all that down. And
yes,
like,
it's important, especially for police.
Oh, right. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure you're still affected by everything that happened to you, and that was years
And
ago.
what's worse is she actually tried claiming a medal for it, and she spiked my drink with morphine when I got released from the hospital, and she was not even cleared to give lidocaine. Yes, and I had liquid morphine. It was like almost like cough syrup, and she literally spiked my Sprite with it. It almost tastes like lean, basically. And I was just like, what did you do to this drink? And because I thought it was crazy at first, because she would bring food and she'd always want me to eat it, and she'd just kind of stare at me. And I was just like, it's kind of like this vibe, like, I don't touch it, And then when I was released from the hospital, I was in like a physical therapy appointment, and I was quite lucid. I wasn't like out of it. I was in a wheelchair, super angry, and rightfully so, but I was there. And, she spiked it, and she goes, "Oh, you look like you were in pain." And she kind of grinned, this creepy grin. And I was just like, "You're not even clear to give lidocaine. I know this because I took the medication administration course that you failed. So the fact that you're giving a Schedule 1 narcotic when you're not even trained to give lidocaine is concerning." And no one took it seriously. She applied for a medal because she felt she did so much work. In actuality, she actually caused it, but she was never punished. Wow. There was no admonishment. She got 2 LORs after she lunged at me 2 months later when I pushed the issue, because she went to the first sergeant's office, senior master sergeant no less, in pumps, like 5-inch pumps and Mimi Bobek eyes. Like she had like purple all the way up in her blues, her full service dress. So obviously she got lit up, right? So she got 2 LORs, and then, it just got worse from there. And I wasn't protected. Nobody wanted to keep me from this issue. And, we need to do that for each other. If we see something, we say something. If something is happening to you, you speak up. It's hard at times, especially with children involved. Absolutely. It's terrifying. But do you want them to be raised in seeing that this is okay and acceptable? Or do you want them to see that it's okay to be happy and safe in your own environment? And on that note, so I actually, when I was researching, I did find that they have a new program that was launched in 2019 by the VA. It's called the Intimate Violence Assistance Program. And so this program specifically, and I'm going to put the link up on the bottom of the page, but this is actually a specific resource for people that are dealing with these type of issues. They can have like a counselor assigned to them, speak with them, give them information and things that they need. And I think a lot of people, when they're in these situations, they feel that, there's nothing here for me. There's, I don't know what I'm going to be able to do. But at the end of the day, it's something that we absolutely need to be our own best advocates in.
Yeah. And I think for the folks that do use a VA, our fellow veterans, like even if you get, and this sounds weird, but even if you get a 0% rating for disability, that percent rating from the VA gives you access to the VA for, services like this, and even getting like access to the pharmacy, the VA pharmacy, so you don't have to pay a copay. So even if, let's say your disability comes back at 0%, you still are able, you went through that process with the VA, so you're still able to get the VA card, and it allows you, access to the VA. And a lot of people don't realize that that's part of the process. But, domestic violence, spam call, not just veterans, but anybody. And for our civilians out there, there's that domestic hotline, and anybody can call that, right? It's not just for civilians.
Yes.
Even if you're a veteran and you would rather, like sometimes, the military way of doing things is just like, oh man, let's just talk to a regular civilian because they might have a different perspective, and have a plan. I think it's easier said than done, right? And on how you're going to leave. Like there's so many things that you got to have, like a savings account that's your own, like that nobody else can have access to, especially the person abusing you. Like open up a bank account, even the went to, and I know we're short on time, but if you can walk away with one thing, it's all about your safety, because again, if you feel like, with domestic violence, sometimes stalking is a part of that. And so they might track the victim can see on their phones, like who they've contacted, who they've called. So most of the domestic violence websites, like they have a little button that you can press to like get you out of that. So let's say your partner like is looking over your shoulder to see what you're you could press, like usually there's an X to get you out of that page, so it looks like you're just looking at the weather or something. And it's sad that they have to design the website. Yeah, it's sad that they have to design the websites with that feature on there, to make it look like you're not asking for help, you're not reaching out. But for your sake, nobody deserves that. You are worthy. You know, if you're a victim and you're watching this podcast, like, you know, Brandy and I, like Brandy can tell you stories because she's been through some horrific. It's almost like workplace violence. So I think domestic violence, workplace violence, it's the same.
So many different types of violence, so many types of stalking. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, and you have to see these people every day, you know, maybe except for the weekend. But if you're deployed and you have to see these people 7 days a week, you know, that's just messed up. That's why you medical, like, I'm like, man, I'm glad I'm an engineer because medical field people have access.
I did all those physicals, man. Like, I didn't want to do your job. No offense. I love being a medic,
but we just have a wrench and a ladder.
But it was definitely a pleasure to have you on tonight. I apologize for the the glitches that we're having. Unfortunately, they're doing a wild amount of construction, like literally a block from my house. But we are. We do that whole suck it up buttercup thing. Unfortunately, I do too much. But at the end of the day, you know, there's the 988 hotline. There's the Battle Buddies app. You know, there's this webpage, https://IPv/index.asp that will direct you, even if you just go to va.gov and just type it in. That's the specific program. IPV is the initials for it, which does stand for Intimate Violence Assistance Program. It's absolutely a resource that is available to you. And, you know, and that's what she's talking about. You can see on the screen where there's that little button there. And that's what she's meaning is basically if someone were going through that violence, they can press it and it would look like, you know, they're scrolling through their phone. And it doesn't look like anything that would be seen as a cry for help. Right. And I think a lot of abusers, they try to manage that or gaslight people to the point where they feel there's no recourse, or, you know, they're being watched everywhere. Their car's tracked, you know, their phones and things like that. They just feel like it's an unwinnable situation. But we're here to tell you that you are worthy. You absolutely have resources. And if anyone has any questions, please reach out. I know we did change your background today due to, you know, me accidentally deleting stuff. I apologize. But if you go to the Yes, I Am the Veteran podcast on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, you can reach out to me personally, Brandy Pet. You know, if you're having it, you can reach out to Miss New Mexico Veteran Select. And at the end of the day, you know, we're here to help. And that is what our job is. Yes, we do have wild adventures. I won't even lie. At the end of the day, though, it is about servicing the community. And, you know, all different types of people need help. You know, it's okay to not be okay, but it's not okay to suffer in silence, is my thoughts.
Especially with, you know, the whole pandemic and everything, and then everything that followed that. So reach out, connect, compete in a pageant, because you'll meet so many other veterans or even other contestants who may go through the same thing you're going through, and you can lean on each other for help. So thanks for having me, Brandy.
So absolutely, sis. So again, that is the America's Select Veteran. That is the name of the competition, and I love. But absolutely, please reach out if anyone has any questions. You know, it's something. There you go, America Select Veteran, right there. So absolutely, veteran pageant. So if anyone is interested, I know I have had people reach out, either to have me coach or to, you know, they just had questions. There's all different types of ways that you can be awesome. You know, you don't have to look like a certain Barbie doll. You know, you don't have to look this way. You don't have, you know, with abuse, it comes in all forms. You know, understand that, you know, unfortunately, things like this can happen to anyone. So it's important to be vigilant and to have the resources available to you if you were to need to do so. But absolutely, it's a pleasure to have you on. Like, it's rare I have anybody from the Miss Veteran world, so it's always a pleasure when I do get to have them on. But before we did close up tonight, sis, is there anything that we can do to support you in what you're doing for your current competition?
Just follow the page. Nationals are in October. And I want to shout out to Sherry Cooper, because she was in the 2022 cohort for MBA. and doing this pageant as well. And so she
Yay.
is my sister veteran. So shout out to Sherry, and my daughter just adores you and you both. So thank you for having me on your show.
It's like I said, I love seeing the community.
You guys take care of yourself. Be safe out.
I love her.
We love you too, Brandy.
Absolutely. And so just to let you guys know, we will have the Veterans Action Council on next week. Oh, I'm so sorry. You're kind of going in and I apologize. Yes, I love you guys. I'm basically like the example of what not to do in the beauty pageant world, I feel like at this point. But at the end of the day, it's okay to be different, be weird, be yourself.
I think if you read about Wonder Woman, Gal Gadot, she was like a rebel. I think she made it to a pageant and she just didn't want to do it. And so she just like didn't care. And there's a story about that. I'm like, oh my gosh, and she's gorgeous. And so you read about that and you're like, oh, that's funny. It's really funny. So
yes. I mean, I didn't win a title. I just won Hot Mom of the Year. And I think that was enough for me.
That's an honor, you know?
It was definitely an experience.
I'm so excited.
But have a good rest of the day. I know, I'm so excited for you too. So we're gonna have Miss Ann on again soon. So for me, yes. Well, hopefully I don't mess up this blade. Oh, I know. No pressure, man. I hope James likes it. Okay, but at the end of the day, guys, it's okay to not be okay. But absolutely reach out if you're in need of support as advocates. But Aurelia, take us away, my little nugget.
Hi, I'm Aurelia. Just a reminder, smash like, hit subscribe, and click the bell. Please give me my mommy some hearts. Yay, veterans!
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
I love her. All right, have a good night.